Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz, to a realistic map of meaning. He's reading some wonderful material, so let's just jump right in and say hello. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. So good to be with you today. I guess you were going to respond to a comment that was on from August 6th.
Yeah, sure. I love to respond to comments. I love to give comments, and you're of course free to put the comment. I guess on the was it a YouTube comment or a Facebook comment? I don't know. Okay, yeah, I see those. Um, again, anybody watching, I say front. My email address is sbs for Sam Bob Sam 447, the three numbers 447 at gmail.com. So if you want to send me an email with a question or comment or criticism or anything you want, I will not publish your email address. Um, I send out a private invitation to Zoom people. It's all under BCC. So no, I'll just highlight it. One concern was that I was teaching too many things and maybe implying that Noahides had to do certain things, which is not the case. It's not the case that they have to do those things, and it's not the case that I was teaching that. So I'm going to explain something that we're reading right now together is Shulchan Aruch, which I explained in the introduction, was a book written in the 1300s by Rabbi Yosef Cairo, based on a book written 100 or 200 years earlier by Yaakov ben Asher, the Tour, that goes through, starts with daily life of a Jew, and has four books of four different areas of laws for Jews to follow, practical. Like this is how you have to behave, and this is how you do it. I started writing, I gave a class many years ago, and what I was interested in is what is the blessing implicit in this behavior? Whereas I'm expecting that there's a reason for behaving the way we do. And I was curious, and the reason would be not because God doesn't need anything. So I'm assuming that it's a benefit to us to do this. And so I was looking for what is the benefit, and I called it a blessing. Because the name wound up being a rhyme on the original title. So that was done for the Jewish people in mind. And it's my own insights into many of the laws that I wrote down. And I thought it might be useful to present here. Um, and you'll tell me if it is. Now, but it's right now we haven't even gotten to anything that is absolutely required. Maybe one thing that's absolutely required of Jews, never mind non-Jews. So it's we're talking here about customary behaviors and rabbinic what do you call them, mandates or rabbinic laws, rabbinic instructions on how we should behave. Now, there's a number of levels of behaviors that we do. One is the Torah says to do something. That's God giving us an instruction. Do this. It's good for you. We trust God. We know whether we understand it or not. We're going to follow that. If God's telling us to do it, you can't fight City Hall, right? City Hall, no bigger City Hall than God. So you can't, if He says do something, you do it. But it's good to understand what how it works and where it might be leading you, and you never know the full of it, but you can inquire into it, which people do, but you have to follow it. But then there's the rabbinic laws or instructions that they added to it, and they're humans and they have reasons for adding it, and so you're not only entitled, you probably should know the reasons and understand what it is they're getting at, especially since sometimes there is a conflict of interest. For example, they'll say to do something, but you happen to be in a situation where that would actually wind up contravening one of God's laws or contravening another one of their laws. So you have to understand what are the dynamics, and you may not be fully comfortable that you can make that decision. So you go to a rabbi, but if you're comfortable with the decision or you feel you have to make a decision, that's okay because you're dealing with a human advice and you're making your best decision, trying to do the right thing. Um, then there's a third level, and that is Jewish customs. The Jewish people have developed certain behaviors that, for one reason or another, they become our hallmark or things we like to do, and they're not a rabbinic instruction, and they're certainly not a Torah instruction, but they're the way Jewish people behave. And since we have a national identity, we have a peoplehood, and so it's not considered proper to leave that peoplehood, to divorce yourself from the Jewish people, because your best way to operate is as a member of the Jewish people. So when the Jewish people decide to do something a certain way and you want to go against that, that's not looked upon favorably, and so you oughtn't to do that. But of course, if there's mitigating circumstances, then that explains why you're not following it. It's not that you don't want to be part of the Jewish people. It's you're in a particular circumstance. So this one time you're going to have to behave differently. So those are the levels of that you have to be aware of. And then there's at the last level, in terms of behavior, customs, there are various groups of Jews around the world because of our exile and dispersion. So the Ashkenazic Jews that lived mostly in Europe developed one set, and the Sephardic, the Mediterranean Jews lived in another part of the world. And remember, travel wasn't as like today, so they developed their own habits. And that, by the way, the book that I'm basing this material on, which is called the Shulchan Aruch by Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the prepared table by Rabbi Yosef Cairo. He was the rabbi of the Mediterranean Jewish community, and there are more. Rav Moshe Isserlis, who wrote annotations within the text, was amending that text, the original text of Rabbi Yosef Cairo. He amended it to give instruction to his community, which was the European community. He was the top rabbi there. So that's how we wind up with two levels within that one book. And now I introduce a third level, my blessings, whereas I'm just looking for, okay, whatever you say, but what's the advantage to us? And I'm trying to explain that. So sometimes I get into just explaining what they're saying, and sometimes, but I really am trying most of the time to explain how it makes sense or how you can understand the benefit. Okay, now, non-Jews behaving like Jews.
We appreciate you, Rabbi. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, so now the next thing is that can non-Jews follow the Torah? There's some things that we're told don't do, but that's true everywhere. That's true within the Jewish people. There are the priests and the Levites and the regular Jews, and the priests were the only ones that were able to go and work in the temple, for example, when we had a temple, and the Levites worked around the temple. They couldn't go in and do most of the services, but they were helpers in there. And nobody from the Levite tribe was allowed to perform like a Kohen. And the Kohens had a certain, they had to show up and do their thing. And it was very regimented. And that's the way the world works. God puts people on the planet with talents and positions, and it's expected that they'll, put those talents and positions to use, and they have a job to do. And then other people have different talents and different positions and so on. And you see the variety that God created. It's not an accident. God wanted people to be in various positions and work in different ways. So that applies to the difference in peoples too. There's most of the population is not Jewish. Most of the Jewish population is not priesthood. They're less. They can't go into the temple. So there's various stages, and everybody's got a job to do. Two of the things that non-Jews that Rambam makes a mention of that non-Jews should not do are keep Shabbos, which means to keep Shabbos in the way Jews do, which is not to perform 39 creative acts, which are normally translated as work. Sometimes they are work, but some of these are very simple, like striking a match and lighting a match on is forbidden on Shabbos for a Jew. No work involved. It's very easy. Lighter or strike a match can be no effort at all. So it's not the work, it's not the sweaty thing. This is considered creative labor that's not for Jews. Non-Jews should not try and restrict themselves like that. It's not for them. However, there is a part of Shabbos that they can keep, and I developed not a theory. I've developed an understanding of how to approach Shabbos to celebrate it. And then the other thing is the ownership of the Torah itself, the laws and so on. It's a very complicated body of information, and Jews are assigned a task. Oh, it's more than a task. It's like it's a life task. It's an immersion course to get immersed. Now, only few of us are successful at that. They're big rabbis, and they are totally immersed. They have the knowledge at their fingertips. It's unbelievable the data they can bring to bear, and the insights and correlations and comparisons that they make. It's just phenomenal when you really understand what's going on to see them at work. So that ownership of the Torah is only for the Jewish people. You want to own the Torah like that, you have to convert and become Jewish. If you're not Jewish, then you obviously have to know the part of the Torah that's relevant to you, and perform it and understand it and know it well. But things that aren't, I think that as the way I read it, if you're curious to see what do the Jews have to do, what do the priests have to do in the temple, you can read that. It's not forbidden, but don't try and maintain ownership of it, because you're not capable or you're not officially allowed to make a decision in that area. That's what we're talking. Is that if a question comes up and you say, well, how do you understand this? And you want to raise your hand and say, oh, well, let me explain it to you. No, you got part of immersing in the Torah would be to actually accept the behavior on yourself and do it. So then you can really talk about that. So that's the way it is in with the telephone system. You ever see the telephone repairman? He opens up one of those posts where all the wires are coming in, and you come over. You see, I read something in a book once. Let me help you there. Oh, please get away from me. You're gonna wreck the whole Eastern Seaboard. You'll pull down on the phone system. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to be immersed in it. You've got to be well trained to start making a comment like that. So it's the same idea. To me, it's the same idea. So those are the two things that you really have to qualify to get involved in. The other parts are just is it a good idea or not? No. So I just want to read again a paragraph in Rambam. And Rambam, Maimonides, is, let's say, the rabbi to go to. So everybody goes to him, and he wrote the most, I think, in terms of the early giants that we use as the authority on what the Torah said. And I'm looking at chapter 10 in the Laws of Kings and Their Wars. This is where chapter 9 and 10 deals with Noahide non-Jews. And in paragraph 10 there, he says that a ben Noach, a Noahide, that wants to perform any mitzvah of the other mitzvahs. And he just in the previous paragraph I talked about Shabbos and learning Torah. So he says about the other mitzvahs, he wants to do it in order to receive reward. He's not doing it because he was commanded. But he says, like that, I can see the benefit. That's what I understand what he's saying. I can see the benefit. I want to do that. I want to get that benefit. So we don't stop him. And if he brings something to us, for example, if he brings a sacrifice to bring into the temple, so we take it. And if he gives charity, so we take it and we apply it in the best way we can, because he can become part of the community. He's there. He's operating within our confines. He's law abiding and so on. So that to me is the magical statement: is that if you want to do something, not because you are obliged to. You're not, before he said you're not allowed to make up new rules. So if you say, I have to do this, no, you don't have to do that. You have to know where you're coming from. And as we do, remember those three levels of the Torah law, the rabbinic law, and the Jewish custom, we have to maintain awareness of those levels, because sometimes there's a conflict and you have to be able to decide. You have to know well, in this situation, I'm only trying to follow a custom, and yet there's a Torah law here that says don't do that, or a rabbinic law, and it's just a custom. So forget the custom. You have to follow the higher order of things. If it was a rabbinic law contravening a Torah law, so then you have to follow the Torah law, except in certain circumstances. So you have to know how it works, and you have to know what you're dealing with. So the same thing there. You can't say I have to do this as a law in the Torah that applies to me. I got to do it. No, you don't have to do it. You want to do it? I understand. Okay. So, but then you have to know the context in which you're doing it. So that's the background that I have to explain again, on which the basis on which I'm doing this book, which is I call Shulchan Baruch, which is following the Shulchan Aruch, which means prepared table, that Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote, and Rabbi Moshe Israelis, the Ramah, amended to fit the European community, and became a famous template for discussing Jewish behavior. There's other books that follow the same order of material, but rewritten by other masters. For example, the first Lubavitch Rebbe, first Chabad rabbi, wrote something called the Rab Shulchan Aruch. He's the Rab, and he wrote another Shulchan Aruch. He wrote his own version, followed exactly the paragraph, same chapter headings, and so on. But he wrote it a little differently for his group, and then someone else wrote other Shulchan Aruchs, and then there's Kitzer Shulchan Aruch, which is the concise version, and that they did straight from the template. And there's Aruch HaShulchan, where he changed the order of the two words. He goes into more detail and so on. There's many versions that were done afterwards. So it just became a favorite template. So I follow the template. So having said all that, as I'm getting further into it, and remember, I did this originally with the Jewish people in mind. So now that I'm spending more time with Noahides, I may go through, and I recently started to re-examine the text, and I may start, I don't want to take out sections because I don't want to change that text. I don't want to assume responsibility. But what I think is reasonable to do is take those sections that are not really relevant and reduce them in font size to like 8 points, so that they're like a footnote size. So even they're still in the body of the text, but the eye can easily skip over it and go to the next thing. So it'll read a little more meaningfully, and the background information will still be there, or the other parts there that are not so relevant will still be there, but you can just concentrate on the stuff that's more relevant. I'm going to try and do that in the future, near or far, we'll see. That having said that, okay, so now that took up half the class. Now the next half of the class, I wanted to revisit what we said last week, which gave rise to this comment that I was going into too much detail. So now I'm going to share the screen. I got to have permission to share the screen. Okay, I'll share the screen here. No, it's still host disabled participant screen sharing. And I'm going into here. No, that's not it. That was the email. Where was it? One. Here's my ZD. This is where I left off last time. So to review, because actually, so it's a good thing that we had this comment, because it was a very convoluted subject matter that I was trying to explain. And so I want to go over it again, but not following the written word, but just out loud. There's this, but here's where it starts, right at the beginning of this chapter. And we'll just read the words and see what's driving the discussion. Okay, so Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the Shulchan Aruch, writes, when one washes his hands, he should recite the blessing regarding washing the hands, Kalal and Tilas Yadayim, and then Ramah makes his comment. All right. And then in paragraph 2, he says, he hasn't told you to wash his hands yet. First, he starts with the blessing. Now he goes back and says, now one should be careful to wash one's hands 3 times in order to remove the foul spirit, i.e., the spiritual effects from sleeping, from them. That was not in the original text. That's from Sepharia, because the foul spirit is understood already from things he said earlier, that it's the spiritual effects from sleeping. Now, so that's what we have. And he's washing. So we have, so he's introducing this idea that there's a foul thing from sleeping. We've had 2 ideas that are presented by the by the great rabbis. One idea is that when you're sleeping, your hands are active and they're scratching your body. You can itch, whatever, and your hands are moving all over your body, which can become sweaty under the blankets or whatever, touching your orifices, and it's considered that they can become dirty. They can become germ laden, if you like. That they didn't know about germs necessarily, but they knew about demons. They called them demons. There's really, when you think about it, not much different. You can't see the germs, you can't see the demons, but they can hurt you. So, so the idea was to clean your hands, just cleanliness, hygiene. Wash your hands when you wake up, so that you get rid of that unhygienic behavior that you couldn't avoid. But as soon as you can, do it. That's one approach. The other approach is, well, there's this foul spirit, is that when you sleep, it's like you're dead. It's the close you get. In fact, there's a Gemara that says that sleep is 1/60th of death. 1/60th is a famous ratio, because if non-kosher food falls into kosher food and it's 1/60th, you consider it's annulled, it's overcome, it's overwhelmed by the majority. But it has to be just 1 in 60, not just a majority. So death is 1/60th. Sleep is 1/60th of death. So it's like you're dead when you're sleeping. Now, dead bodies are the source of spiritual impurity. We have all kinds of rules, especially the Cohens, the priests, couldn't come in contact with a dead body. The high priest was never allowed to come in contact with a dead body, but the regular priests had to come in contact with their parents and their brothers and their sisters, but not anybody else. They shouldn't contaminate themselves to anybody else. In fact, to this day, when there's a funeral, there's a special place for the Kohanim to come in to be part of the crowd, but it's like considered a separate building, so they're not in the same building as the dead body is. It's like a special way to separate them, and they don't come into the cemetery field. They stand on the side in the road. They don't come in, because even though we're all considered spiritually impure because somehow we've come in contact, walk in a hospital or something, we all consider ourselves at the highest level of impurity, and we can't get out of that until we get back to the temple, but we practice it. We practice it in certain ways. So even to this day, a person who believes that he's descended from a priest, from the priestly family, will not enter a cemetery unless it's their parent that's being buried. So you see that there's this, that a dead body is the source of impurity, whatever it is, however you're going to treat it. So why is sleep, being like dead, is considered a vestige of that impurity. And so they teach that when you wake up, okay, now you're not dead anymore, but you were like dead. So they tell you that the impurity lingers on your fingertips, and you have to wash it away. So you wash it with a vessel. You fill the vessel up, you pour it on your right hand first, and left hand, go 3 times back and forth, and that's removed. That's considered the way to get rid of spiritual impurity. Those are the 2 main reasons for washing. And then there's a third reason that's given later on, and that is that when the priests, going back to the priests again, when the priests would go into the temple, now they're pure, they're allowed to come in and they're pure. That's not the problem, but they're going to start the service of the day for God, so they have to consecrate themselves. It's a ritual. and they have to. There was a kiosk. There was a washing station right at the entrance of the temple, and it had a number of spouts on it. And the priests had to take a vessel and fill it up with water, and pour it on their right foot and right hand together. They would hold their hand down to their foot and pour it on the hand and foot together, and then the other hand and foot, and that was the way. And they had to work barefoot, by the way. They were consecrating, their touching of anything, touching the ground of the temple, touching the implements of the temple, and so on. So that was a ritual preparation for the service of God. That that's universal. That water cleanses, so it's a ritual cleansing. But you're starting the service as a priest, so you have to start this way. So those are the three backgrounds: cleanliness, hygiene, if you like. That's one. Two is the touch of death, and three is the priests would begin the day in the temple. So we took that on for ourselves with the same ideas. Hygiene. Be aware to keep yourself clean. That's anytime you can get your kids to wash up or keep themselves clean. It's a good thing to teach people. So that's one thing. The second then, touch of death, is that death. So we have to understand, why is death impose a spiritual impurity? And I posit, this may have been a culled from other rabbis, but I'm putting this in my own words, is that when you're dead, you're finished achieving everything. You can no longer serve God in this world, anyways, in this body. And so you're removed from achievement. Life is all about achieving, about growing, about accomplishing things. So it's it's worse than that. It's when you see somebody dead, when you come in contact with a dead body, you're so reminded that this is how you're going to wind up, that you despair of achieving anything. What's life all about? It's like just a waste of time. And, you get depressed that I'm going to wind up like this, and everything I've tried to work for is going to become somebody else's, and it's just very depressing. And that's not a good state to be in. That's not a way to accomplish things. So that depression is impure. It's vile. It's counterproductive. So we have to do something to yank ourselves away from that feeling of depression, even if it's not conscious, but it's subconscious. That the feeling that we're headed towards death and dying and so on, and it's it's all about to nothing. And the truth is, we do amount to nothing, but we on the other hand, we do amount to something. We can do what we do, and so we want to concentrate on that positive aspect, that we can achieve something, we can serve God, we can do what He wants us to do, and there's a lot to discuss on that score, but we want to concentrate on that part of it. So we have to get rid of this feeling of death, that we have to sleep, that we have to die. We can rejuvenate. So we wash away that lingering sense of that we were dead, that lingering spirit. So that's the second one. And the third one is that when we start our day, that's our temple. Our day is our temple. That's where we do the service of God. So we're walking into the day, we should wash first thing in the morning, because we're walking into our temple, life. And we're a priest in that temple, and we're serving God, and we should go through the ritual that we have work to do, and we have to do it in a pure and priestly way. So those are the three ideas, and they each bring with them a different requirement. And one of the requirements is to wash away, for example, the feeling of death, the feeling of depression. We said you need a vessel, and you have to do it 3 times. And in other words, you need a vessel. Don't put your hands under the tap and expect the tap to clean it, but rather fill up the water in a thing and pour back and forth. So what are you saying when you do that? You're saying that you have to do something. You can't just put your hands in front of you and let the water clean you. No, you have to do something, because that's how you get things done in this world. That's how you serve God, is by doing things. And not only that, but you have to do 3 times. You know why 3? Three is it establishes a pattern. And you never get anything done all at once. It's always a lot of effort. And if you establish a pattern and you keep at it, you'll get it done. That's the way humans get things done, is that we do small things, but over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so you establish a pattern and now it gets done. So the idea of three is just that establishes the pattern. See, the minimum way to establish a pattern is three. Here's how I prove it. If I say 1, 2, the next number is what? Could be 3 or it could be 4 because I doubled the 1 to 2, or I just added 1 to 2. Like it could be either way. But once I say 3, the next number is 4 after 3 because I'm adding 1 to each number before. But if I said 1, 2, 4, then oh, I'm doubling the number before. So I doubled 1, I got 2. I doubled 2, I got 4. Double 4, I get 8. So it should be 1, 2, 4, 8. Right? That's you can't say it. I'm adding 2 each time because then 1 would have become 3. So you see the rule of your going. You establish the pattern, minimum 3. That establishes a pattern. So some patterns need more than 3 to establish, but minimum you need is 3 to establish a pattern. And so that's the reason that you always 3 is so prevalent in getting something going, because you're going to establish a pattern. So those are the insights I had. Some of them I saw somewhere else, but a lot of it came from, I think, my analysis. And so these 3, interestingly, 3 reasons to wash your hands in the morning are always prevalent, and they make sense. They make sense, and they apply to everybody. It's not like the Torah said, nor never said anything about this. So we're not saying that God said to do this. We're just saying that the rabbis instructed us, or we want to, they're acting like the priests. That was a lot of things we do is just so that the priests will always remember what they have to do when Mashiach comes. We're waiting for the Messiah to come and rebuild the temple any minute now, and we want to be ready. So as soon as he comes, we will we'll have that practice in hand. So that's why we keep it up. So there's reasons for everything we do, and it's good to know the reasons, even if you don't want to do it, but you can appreciate it. You can support people that want to do it. You don't always have to be the guy that doesn't, but to understand it is very useful. And when you understand it really well, because they're really golden, time-tested methods of behavior, then you're on a good road. You're gonna help yourself, but you have to understand what's behind it, because if to do it without understanding becomes road and it loses its flavor, and it doesn't speak to you, and you always have to study. This knowledge is always the tingles the taste buds. That always makes it worthwhile. That's to understand what you're doing. That makes life worth it. So it's good in anybody's hands.
Wow. And that was, Rabbi shared this lesson today because it was in response to a comment that was given on our YouTube channel. And thank you for addressing that, Rabbi, and clarifying beautiful stuff. Grace, Ronald, you guys have any comments or questions for Rabbi before we wind up for today?
No, that's all clear for me. Thank you.
Good.
Grace, you good?
We can't hear you. I don't hear you. You hear her, Ben?
No, I can't hear her, but her microphone's live. It's showing us live.
We should hear you, but we don't. So
her device may not have permissions to the microphone, even though it's up.
Oh. So we can't hear you. So if you want to put in something in the chat or send an email,
SBS 447 at gmail.com.
3 letters, 3 numbers. Sam Bob Sams. SBS 447 at gmail.com.
Right on. Well, just a couple more weeks, Rabbi, and I will be free back again on, next month I'll be free on the Mondays and the Tuesdays after the 2nd. So, so we're off till Sunday now?
Yes. Everything you do for us is very much appreciated, Dan, and always be well and look after yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Like I said, I had a little family emergency today, and sadly, yeah, my little brother got taken to the hospital, and yeah,
Oh, your brother,
fairly bad, fairly bad scenario, and yeah,
uh,
just not good. But
uh,
so my
okay.
phone's been going off the hook, with Family Matters, people looking for information, and still I had to
What,
do a broadcast this afternoon too as well, and
your
trying
oldest?
to work with another chat group as well. Ronald's with, and it's nonstop. There's yeah, and my phone's just endlessly bing 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 bing.
Are you the oldest in your family?
Oldest boy. I have an older sister who's a year and a half older than me, but she's always last in line when it comes to family information, it seems, and so she'll call me often, wanting to know the scoop or the inside of the story, and you know what Family Matters are like, but. It's always a joy when we can get together and hear clarity of Torah. And yeah, so anything that Rabbi's been teaching about hand washing is not done or being shared in a sense that Noahides are obligatory. But understand how repetition can develop readiness. And more than that, I think he's touched on some really interesting points tonight. So thank you, Rabbi Schwartz. So we're planning to be back on Sunday night.
9 o'clock. Yeah.
Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Is that correct, Rabbi?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to sign out for now, and we will be back on Sunday night with more Zoom Daily with Rabbi Schwartz, and we'll continue with his order of blessings. So till then, Shabbat Shalom to everybody, and we will see you then. Bye for now.
But you will.